Voting in progress.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Thank you. Ms. Curtis? Here. Mr. Guarnero? Here. Mr. Grady? Here. Mr. Miller? Here. Mr. Holmes? I'm not sure if anybody. Any public comments?
No, I'm here for it.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 10th, 2022 regular meeting?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 10, 2020 regular meeting.
Second? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. So moved. New business, Jeremy, want to make a motion on number one? A lot of words on that.
Not a reading. Okay, I move to approve the transfer of funds from countywide professional services, $12,250. Development services, managers, personnel, $18,500. Development services, pension, $9,000. Building maintenance and repair, $4,000. Animal control, part-time and summer help, $5,000. Emergency management, Dan EAPs, $10,000. Health Department Regional Health Services, $17,250. DNA Department Head, $13,000. DNA Pension, $5,000. The school's capital equipment account, all in the general fund.
Second? Second. Discussion?
Yeah, all of the above.
All in favor? So moved. Here.
Move to approve a transfer from the waterways treatment account, $10,037.37. The storm related overtime account, $2,889, both from the general fund. And from the flatbed truck account, $14,846.34. The wood chipper account, $15,281.91. The Bobcat accessories account, $511.11. The excavator account, $342.75. The pickup truck account, $150. The Timberland clubhouse roof replacement account, $400.20. The lightning protection account, $140. The rack body, $8.80. The trailer, $284.02. And the storage unit account, $625.50. All from the capital recurring fund. For the skid steer account in the capital.
Second? Discussion?
Yes. Pennies, really.
I was waiting for you to read off the candy machine. What they shut down.
The intent was to take all the remaining money from all of these
Clean
acquisitions,
everything up.
clean all out, and instead of leaving CNR out there.
I thought you were just trying to tongue tie it.
Many of these you probably recognize in the last 2 or 3 years in purchases. These, it costs not quite what we moved, so we cobbled all that together. It's a little general fund money to buy a Caterpillar to replace our 15-year-old. 2007.
All in favor?
I
So moved.
move to approve a transfer of $60,000 from the school workers' compensation account, $65,000 from the school contractual services account, from the Hubbard playground account, all in the general fund.
For a second? Discussion?
I have a question on this. There is $60,000 excess in the school workers' compensation fund. Okay, is it just 60,000 or so more than that excess? Is this all the excess? Or is it part of the excess?
I have to look at the final report, but it's nearly all, there might be a couple grand left.
Okay, well, it's not.
That's Department 61.
Yeah.
We continue to negotiate all of our insurance contracts as we go into the year. We anticipated a 5% increase And based on our actual performance when the audit was completed, we actually had a 0% increase, which is why this is here.
I have a different question. I don't see the 60,000 question. I'm looking at correctly, right?
If you were over in the encumbrance column,
So the company's count is not real.
what I did is everything you see for transfers, I encumbered. So that what you see left over will be after the transfers you're approving tonight.
Okay.
I do that to make sure that we don't double dip, that we don't process a second transfer. So once we put it in and intend to ask you for approval, I encumber it to make sure it's set aside. So
That's real, that's it.
what I'll do is release that encumbrance and then process the transfer if you do.
So, Steve, what can you be more specific about that?
Yes. So over the last 5 years, the first playground we redid was we redid Grizzlies Playground. There was a large amount of cracks. The pavement, I think, was somewhere around 20 years old. It was just falling apart. So we did a complete, we widened the road coming around back so we can get large trucks up there to put in rooftop units. We milled the base, we milled it, repaved it. We bought brand new basketball hoops that I think had been there since like 1980. So we redid them, and then we had a company come in, and everything, all the stencils were designed from Grizzly PTO, and they put all different types of play elements on the playground itself. Then the next school we did was last year, we did Willard. During the summer, they came in, milled the base, 5 brand new hoops, and the same type of different interactive things. So the only playground left to do is Hubbard, and the current condition of that one has got some large cracks. Incorporated in that is that's the only school that actually has cement staircases that lead into the playground for fire egress. And those are original from the school was constructed. And with the salt and everything we're using now, there's large holes in them, there's pits in them, they're falling apart, and they're just not safe. So part of this 125,000 is to replace the 3 sets of failing stairs at Hubbard, to mill to pave, repave the whole thing, re-stencil and add 2 brand new basketball hoops. So it's actually a playground here, swings, it's actually, yeah. There's no physical play elements out there except for the hoops.
Well, that's better than $100,000 to stay the lake.
Much.
And this will now deviate because we're taking out of these accounts. This will deviate paying out of capital. So
This is to accomplish what was the 200,000 capital plan. So it's done, or will be done. The reason we're coming now, typically I would come to you in July. You'll note the skid steer with CNO, so it's a little bit different. But the other two, we moved as quickly as possible because we're trying to get them approved now. The school is just ending, so we have the maximum amount of time in the summer. I mean, I think you said there's what, 6 days leeway in the plan
Exactly, yeah.
before school starts.
We can go through the timeline.
That's why we're asking for it.
$75,000 less than first stuff. So I'm happy with that.
So you have quotes on it? You have quotes on all this?
The stairs as of yet, no. The paving I do, I can send it to Kevin.
And so, all in favor?
Aye.
And 4?
Move to appropriate $5,048,046.16 of the American Rescue Plan ARPA grant funds to the HVAC upgrades account in the American Rescue Plan Fund.
Second, discussion?
We talked about it.
Yes, we talked about it for a long time.
All in favor?
Did they ever get the first quote back, by the way? I mean, I know they were, did they ever get the first quote back?
This hasn't gone out to bid, but we did get quotes, cost estimates, or refined cost estimates for both of the other schools. They were much lower than 6 million, to the point where the BBC is going back and challenging. Because the numbers are substantial. Well, not that they're unhappy with them being a lot
I
lower,
don't believe it.
but yeah, I mean, because PBC is priced with professionals, there's that point of, it just doesn't smell right, so to speak.
Move to transfer $188,000 as detailed on the accompanying spreadsheet to cover higher than budgeted expenditures in the identified.
Second? Discussion?
These are all just year-end cleanup.
All in favor?
Uh,
And 6?
Move to appropriate the $4,000 juvenile review board grant to the part-time health workers' account, and social security expense accounts. From the general.
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
One thing I just want to point out, this is a fiscal year 23 appropriation, just so you realize that it's a grant from the state, but it's next, the upcoming fiscal.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 7.
Move to approve the non-budgeted appropriation of the state of Connecticut Local Prevention Council grant in the amount of $2,250 to the Local Prevention Council expenditure account. Of the general.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Favor? Aye. So moved. Item 8.
Move to accept the suspense list of $144,846.27 as presented.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item 9.
At this point, I just wanted to kind of go through, apologize for the eye chart, a few of these pieces, but hopefully it's easy. Item F9, about a little bit past a third of the way through the packet. F9. Just after that, that's the long suspense list, and just after the suspense list. So the first page looked at the proposed capital plan from the budget. We got together a cross-functional team that included various town departments who are heavy users of capital. The Board of Ed, as well as the town manager, myself, and prioritized where we were. So the 2 items in bold are the 2 that you just approved tonight. We'll execute those transitions forward with school elements. We identified the next 3 items as priority 1. Because the timing wasn't as critical with schools, they remain, but will be next. This is server and town and police server maintenance. These should be replaced approximately every 5 to 6 years. They're 8 years old now, so by the time we put them in place, we're close to 10 years old. And then this is the second half, $150,000 for fire alarm upgrades. There, we appropriated $150,000 in the 21 budget. Rolling that over and combining with this, we get the funds to upgrade that fire alarm system. And then the only one left after this would be Griswold, we expect to come back in the next budget, and that would upgrade all the fire alarm systems at the schools. We kind of looked at the next set. New carpeting at the library. It's the original 32-year-old carpet. In the wake of COVID, they have some air quality concerns. The pool repairs out in Hubbard. There was discussion last Thursday at the Parks and Rec meeting, discussing the pool, discussing a proposal for potentially putting in a pickleball court out in Hubbard, potentially using this money for that. So it's a bit up in the air. So we pushed that down to a level 2. And then finally, the 12-passenger van. We're not buying a van for $17,000. Rather that be the town's piece. It's a great federal program that will allow us to potentially replace the senior center van for a small fraction of the cost. The next grouping, 3, the intent would be to use surplus funds from Timberland. Timberland is it's intended to be, and generally is, a self-sustaining entity. The fees pay for the course, and so the idea would be the surplus exists to help purchase some equipment that has been long overdue, and also start the process. There are 7 bridges on the course, and we really replace all of them for safety's sake. So we'll start the process of funding. There are, I believe, 6 walking bridges, 1 cart bridge. And then the 4th one would be the police vehicles. It took us a couple of years to get back on pace, and there we'd like to keep up with that. Those highlighted items are the areas that we're focused on if we achieve the surplus that we projected. Kind of push the next items down, and some of them are because we simply can't get vehicles. Some of them are because when we looked at the prioritization, we felt that each one was lower priority, not unimportant, less than those. One thing I do want to point out in the chart is if we do everything that's highlighted, tiers 1 through 4, it would be $1.25 million against the $3.75 million proposal. So you're talking $2.5 million of capital items that we requested that are going to be pushed to future years. The second page, what I wanted to do is talk about some of the capital projects we discussed. Police station renovation, HVAC, Percival soccer field, highway wash bay, fourth fire vehicle, and Willard School parking lot. All of those things have been discussed as items. This is a proposal. There's no vote tonight, but just to kind of level set and start thinking about how to fund some of these, so we put some of these projects to bed. Police station, the next stage will be design and bidding works. This is taking what we've seen from the police station and really getting it to a finer level, so we can go out to bid, really have something substantive for them to go for. It's estimated it's going to cost about $300,000 additional engineering or architectural work. Proposed to appropriate fund balance, use some of the savings to move that forward this summer. Second stage, which needs to happen before construction, is relocating Board of Ed storage area. What is the Board of Ed storage area today? Would be some of the locker room space and 2 sally ports and some of the evidence storage area. So clearly we need to move Board of Ed storage to another location before we can move forward with that. This is a rough estimate. It's a very rough estimate. This number may be substantially lower. We are looking at the potential to digitize some of the files that are there. Board of Ed is looking at that. The town storage area, we're also looking at that as a potential longer-term solution, a more appropriate way to store data where we can, and also obviously use much less space. The food pantry will need to be relocated as well from downstairs, and we've talked about a few different places. The $1 million is a very, very rough estimate. We need to first figure out what it is we're going to do, where those are going to go, and figure out from there. Then finally, we looked at phases 1 through 3. So essentially removing phase 4 from the proposal that was given by Jakunsky and Hughes, which essentially eliminates the overhead parking, covered parking area in the back. We get you about $4.6 million. And the proposal would be to bond that in June of 2023 and try to construct next year that police parking much more to where it should be. Second project is HVAC. So just going back to when we talked about this before. Was it phase 1 through 3 that we were talking about, or was it just phase 1? I'm confused. There was. We wanted to start, like phase 1 right away. We thought that, the locker areas and all and so forth, for the women and so forth. So
Just phase 3, I believe, was just carports.
okay. So I guess my point is, we wanted to start. We wanted to start things immediately.
Yeah.
So,
Some of the first parts were up there because they have to happen first.
Okay.
So the more detail, for me, that was a lot of detail in this thing. But in terms of being able to bid and construct, they need to do the next phase. Because museums will have to do additional work on that. And then we have to figure out where that food storage before we start the next level of construction. But phase 1 really was sally ports, the locker rooms, the evidence area, and that really represents the Board of Ed storage area. So we had to stage them that way.
We gotta do that up front.
Right.
And the Board of Ed storage has to be in this building.
Not necessarily, but we have to figure out
There's a
what
lot of space in the high school. It's not being utilized.
we have to figure out what to do with that first before we do the construction. One thing I will say is while we use the word Board of Ed storage, a fair amount of that are files related to students, special needs students, as well as other students, and they are accessed by administrators downstairs, often on a daily or several times a day. So where I may have finance records on the other side of the town storage area, they may go back 15 years for capital projects. And I might access them. If I access them once a year, I get surprised. These folks in the Board of Ed are accessing these files daily. So that's why we're potentially it's a digital solution, something that will allow them access, but may not necessarily require the same storage. Well, they're looking at it right now, looking at some different companies. They had a company come in, they have a company coming in tomorrow is the first one, a couple more. So the idea would like would be to hire someone. The reason for that, aside from the fact that that's what they do, is also time. If we were to ask, let's say, the administrators who are referencing those, to do it themselves, it would take a considerable time because they would have to do it only in their downtime.
It's got it all indexed. And the data.
And we got security, especially around student data, so that there's a lot involved. There are companies, there's one, I believe they're based in Manchester, another local, they're doing a lot of digitizing in the state of Connecticut. So this is not an unusual thing, there's a lot of companies who are trying to go this way.
If it's like comparing it could be like Iron I also are not special. They don't use storage for a while.
That's also, I think the board's really trying to figure out what's the best solution, space, cost, but more importantly, being able to access what they need to access in a secure way.
Are they aware of this time?
They are aware now of what we're trying to do, which is moving forward.
What was the price for the all police for the police department?
$5.2 was estimated as hard costs, so site work, carport structures, addition, and interior renovations, 3.9 million. Another 740,000 soft costs, and then 15% contingency of $600,000. The carport itself, the site work, the carport, and all that was considered an any phase. I call it phase 4, but any phase that was 275. So taking that out took the 5.2 million, just under $5 million. Even phase 3 is only $179,000. So you're really dealing with phase 1, interior work, addition, those types of things. That 3.4 million really is the lion's share of the cost, which is going to get saddled towards the locker rooms. And just to give perspective, just so everybody is aware, they have fully utilized the female locker room. There are no more open female locker rooms. They had dispatchers using lockers, and actually when they hired, what was the last one or the last two, they actually moved dispatchers out into cubbies that are in a hallway now because they didn't need the lockers changing and all of that, more the storage and security. So we really are at need, or at that point we really need to move forward with something.
I know we saw the plans, construction was funded by Brian, right? Whatever, yeah. The cardboards, did they have solar panels on top?
I believe they did. I believe these were intended to have solar panels. I believe charging. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I didn't see anything about solar panels. My idea is if we're gonna put solar panels, we get somebody from the state kind of helping those carports. That's a solar panel. Something.
I mean, I do see as I look at the carport listing, metal roof, conduit and feeder from the building, lighting, electric car charge station, external surveillance cameras. So I think the idea is to try, I agree with the solar panels. The charging stations are also looking out to the future of electric vehicles. Making the world better.
I get it that you come in at $5 million, but we do live in the Northeast. It's an internet, get out there and go hard, do a job. So.
The second one is HVAC. You appropriated the money tonight. So the first step will be to hire a construction manager. We've estimated about $500,000. That's going to be somebody who has really worked on things like an HVAC upgrade, especially a multi-site, so that you can start to think about timing, but also start to think about $4.5 million. What's the best use? Is the best use trying to purchase all of the equipment now and store it to avoid some of the supply issues? It's the best use to do one school, to do two schools at once and hire two different companies if we need it. So bring somebody in with some expertise, and then we would look at Willard to the extent that we would need some contingency. If it were more than $4.5 million for Willard, I would recommend in the short term leveraging the fund balance that we have to fill that gap. And then look to take Griswold and Hubbard for bonding. The idea was to try to do those simultaneously to move the project quicker. That's where we stand right now. It's kind of the plan. And so you'd see bonding in June of 2023 for the police station, June of 2024 for Griswold and Hubbard HVAC.
You're contemplating one bond authorization.
I think it's going to depend on how close we are to 4.5 million. And I also think it will depend on the timing. If we're doing them 1 year after the other, we could do them separately. But I think if we're doing them in the same summer like this, I would say 1.
So where do we start that paying up against the $5 million referendum?
Based on the estimates that we've had, it would be right in that neighborhood. Could be.
Yeah. You should have go out to bid and then kind of 5.2%. We don't count, so it's not a project. We break this down in phases so that project's not really $5.624 million like the police station. Is that okay?
Our town attorney would say, if the project
So
is
this
going to
has to
cost
go to
that,
referendum.
we would have to.
And, the other thing is that if you're looking at a contingency, I was just gonna suggest that you put in, I mean, we've appropriated about $5 million of it already. I mean, you could always have the bond authorization be for a higher amount. Than we've already, appropriated.
Oh, absolutely.
So that we can just wiggle room through the bonds. Yeah.
We always bond, we request a bond authorization, including contingency. We only bond contingency if we need it and it's of substantial size. Over the last couple of years, we've had projects where we've tapped into contingency, but I've always come back and asked for year-end transfers to avoid additional bond. Both the police and fire radio projects went over. Police radio, I want to say, we're about 26,000. Fire, I think we're around 55,000. We've got a couple of others to try to do that first, actually, with surplus dollars to avoid the bonding, but we do always ask for it. And then when the project's completed, I would go back to you and ask to deauthorize the excess. It's just not available to use. The next one on the list is Percival Soccer Field. This was started and then determined to be much more substantial. Well, that soccer field has challenges. I guess when it was put in, the field that was there.
Disaster. We were there yesterday, trying to try out, the kids were doing a little pothole.
The potholes are back, it's uneven, and actually when it was built, the fill was stumps and roots and other things that are now popping through. So we have money right now for this, and the council did approve going out to bid, and we're gonna hire a consultant to redesign it. This would be to try to fill in that gap. I wouldn't propose, we'd love to do it this summer, until we actually go out to bid and have a deal of what we're really talking about. We're talking 375, 450. Right now, I'm estimating 225, which puts in about $400,000 of renovation. I know it's a lot, but if we do it right, you're going to get years of use out of this field, and it's used quite a bit. Highway wash bay, we did get 259,000 of the FEMA. When storm ice happened a couple summers ago, there was a 75% reimbursement from FEMA, which is standard. The Congress passed, the president signed, actually bumping that to C90%. So we are going to get a little $5,000 more, which is just a gap of our previous reimbursements from 75 to 90. And then we're proposing about $250,000. PDC took this up at their last meeting and they directed Public Works Director to go back out to bid, see where we're at and what it would cost with and without an automatic car wash. Without the automatic car wash, we're probably talking $800,000. Part of the cost there is we have a gas line and meters on the side of the building where this would be expanded and moving. So part of the cost is actually relocating part of the gas line in the building and then constructing it out. If we put in an automatic car wash, we're probably talking about $1 billion. Damage to the automatic is you could literally run a town vehicle through there. It's probably a fire truck. I don't even know if that may be the case if you brought it out to do. This would also be a lot safer. You'd be able to close the door, it would be heated, so in winter, right now, they kind of drop a plastic tarp down on the outside, and you can get ice and everything else with potential risk of injuries, damage. So we would look to come back when those bids come in and try to use some of the savings to shore up that difference, try to put that project there. If the surplus were to materialize larger, I would propose this year or next, that you take the opportunity before the prices continue to go up at a clip of $75,000 to $100,000 a year, put the order in and buy the fourth fire truck. If you recall, the fire department had identified 4 trucks bought in and around 2001 and really September 11th. 1, we took possession of in March, I believe it was. 2 are on order, and we will be getting those. It'll be a while. This would be the 4th, and would satisfy the strategy for the next few years for the fire department. And then lastly, we have the LoSiP grant from the state. Right now, that's being used to replace leaks in the roof for the highway grounds building, water control building at the complex. I would propose that with the remaining money, plus what we receive next year for LoSiP and what we have this year, to try to put that money towards renovating the Wheeler parking lot. The idea behind it is we're going to shut down Wheeler for summer school, for HVAC. Let's look at the fire alarm, let's look at HVAC, let's look at the parking lot, including if it can work within the wetlands conservation, expanding the parking lot to the side. We may have to do it with, Mike and Ernie, get better terms, basically stone, because if it's in wetlands or close to wetlands area, we can't put pavement down. But we could give the school the additional parking lot that they wanted and needed for many years with stone or something that can accommodate wetlands.
Even buildings like that, well,
Maybe, yeah.
or semi-forest.
So, I mentioned fund balance a couple of times. So the last page, what I've done is try to give the latest picture of where we are. So the AFR that we had at 18.2 million, or 19.5% of the 2022 budget. We took 7.5 million onto the 2 fire trucks as well as the pension payouts. The projected surplus right now of 2.25 million. Surplus used to remove capital items, so that would have been from the first page of this. Signed fund balance in FY23 budget, we used 380,000 fund balance in the upcoming year's budget. And then 775,000 is what I proposed from the fund balance items on the other side. Would still leave the town with 10.65 million, or slightly over the 11% floor that we have. There are 2 elements that I noted at the bottom as other items. Right now, we have a $1.8 million DB pension liability. I expect that number to come down substantially as we come out, because interest rates are up more than 1 percentage point versus what was used for this liability. We'll have that September, October timeframe. I expect that to be much lower. And fire vehicle, obviously the last fire vehicle. So it is sufficient to cover the proposal. Again, no votes, but I want to kind of give a heads up of what we're thinking about. And the only other thing is the very next page, some of the colors on it. I mentioned about 2.5 million of capital being pushed to future years from the FY23 list. FY24, if you look at what we have from the capital plan, is 2.4 million of general fund money. So if we're moving 2.5 million out, and we already had 2.5 million, we're continuing to stockpile. If we only do $1 million or $1.25 million a year, we're going to keep falling further behind. As we look at next year, a lot of things that we're looking at have to do with upgrading buildings that haven't been touched in a while and starting to address the parking lots. The town has spent a lot of money on roads, bridges, buildings, police vehicles, fire vehicles. One area we really haven't done anything on over the last several years has been substantial work on parking lots. We have some challenges. I think it's been McGee, that is parking lot with challenges, I'll just say. I'll be nice. I mentioned Wheeler that we plan to do LoSiP, and that is something we can try to weave in as we look out further. Anybody who's been to Sage Park realizes that's a significant challenge. We are moving forward with the scoreboard and the fiber out there. So we wanted to finish the softball field and the fiber. If we're going to dig up the ground, we're still not determining whether to go above or below ground with the fiber. But if we go below ground, we want to put it in a parking lot and tear it up from the fiber. So once the fiber is done, we want to look at Sage the town hall parking lots in much shape. So we're starting to look at all these, and I would just, as we start thinking about the next budget, it seems far off, but we did talk about getting together September, October with the council and the board of ed and talking through the next budget. This is something to keep top of mind. These things aren't going to go away. That we have here.
So, a couple of things from my side. First of all, soccer field. That falls through the thing about liabilities. The amount of kids that were tripping over these things. Like, and it's town kids. Parents right there watching. It should be on, so they're on the fire truck. Has it been already allowed? Has it been
They're
designed?
I don't believe it's been designed, but I can know that they're working on it, so. But trying to align the timing with the need. And that's why the public, what's that?
There's some speed times on
There are, that's why I'm trying to get ahead of it. They started with the pumpers because those are obviously critical for areas of town that don't have a reliable water source. And so that's why those were actually ordered first.
And this would be East Berlin. Right? Which is the only firehouse in Berlin.
But I'd have to put you exactly where that is.
I think they should step on sign.
I think this is an excellent point. Gives us something, it's kind of a plan, it's laid out. So, one of the things that we've been talking about, no bonding, you mentioned that, bonding, we can't delay some of these things.
Especially if something you want, you don't want to pay cash for it. Police station.
So it is definitely a good overview and it tells us what our priorities are and so forth. There's a lot of work to be done, you know, so appreciate that.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody, our members that were on the capital committee, and, you know, all you folks too. I think there's an awful lot of priorities out there. After this one, it's number one, and you know, your number one is more, when it ends up on a list of being number four, you know, it's
Everybody's priority.
yeah, it's a thankless job that you have to try and do it. I think you're doing it. I think one of the things it shows, though, in our long term, and I think we all recognize this too, but we got to find a way to start putting some of this into the budget. The thing that we can go forever, you know, relying on surplus to do it. We can do surplus to a certain amount, but you could see in Kevin's estimate, we're going to almost cutting our undesignated, unassigned fund balance in half. And not to say 18 or 19 million was the right place, but 10 million, that's getting down to, you know, we really don't want to get much less than that for the rating agencies. You know, and I think just being prudent, because there are other things that do come up. So, I mean, I think if there's a way that we can find where we can get some consensus, I know our fear has always been, we put it in the budget, it's just going to get cut by the council. So maybe we need to have some, you know, bigger discussions along those lines to start doing a little bit more in terms of what I call an honest budget to pay for the things that we really need to do. Because 1.2 million, when we're talking 3.4 or 5. All right, so let's say 10% of those, we don't need it right this year or whatever, but we're still far cry from where we should be. But I think, you know, I think it's a good plan, and if you think we can, you know, our surplus numbers are good, then I think it's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason we said we wanted to get together early in the budget process is that we can hash through some of this stuff, you know, and have some meeting of the minds with respect to the capital plan and so forth. So really get together better and for all of us to come to some kind of agreement. Okay. Okay, the next item is.
Talking about bonding, which is going to be nuts.
So I guess,
Next 35 pages of the report.
why don't we,
Next 35 pages.
since, you've been a team member on.
Yeah.
Why don't you just give us your.
My viewpoint is it would be good for the town to have this, without, but it's realistic for the town to have it. Things changed so much, even in the time we were doing it, the economy and everything else, that we're probably looking at $40+ million, a 3 mil tax increase, and a $3 million a year operating budget. Keep this thing up and alive. All the places we looked at, every one of them was smaller by tens of thousands of square feet than the other towns. And all of those towns were providing a much greater service area than 20,000 people. My personal opinion is this was way too aggressive of a plan right out of the box. And that's what we're stuck with now. That's where we should have been at probably 30 to 40,000 square foot building, we're at 72,000 square feet. And the numbers just don't. That's fine.
What's your opinion versus the YMCA approach?
I think we need to do more research on the YMCA. They have a good plan. They're looking at a smaller, basically, we're only 30,000 square feet. They're not a full service in respect, they would have a dedicated senior center there, but they do offer a lot of senior services. They do have senior exercise programs, they have pool programs for the seniors. They have the regular pool, a full-size competition pool. That would, the town would have it, I think and they were talking about having some sort of a hot tub kind of thing. One thing we learned, at least I learned about anybody else, was the two eyes we visit don't have a steam room. Because the ambulance will be there every day, taking the old person out of the steam room. So, yeah, seems they like to hang in there a little too long, but it's all of them operated a loss. I mean, it's as far as the town operated, it's really kind of a strange thing. The best example was Newtown, and they were running a $600,000 a year loss. And they don't even have a gym facility because they didn't want to compete with the gyms in town, which is something Mark and I were talking about. He's very concerned about the town having competition. You know, town local gyms have a competition. And, obviously, the plan, the one that we were going to build would be a very big gym facility. You guys have any questions about it?
It's not a question, it's more of a statement. So we still have membership to cornerstone.
What's that?
My family has membership to cornerstone. Must the usage. Using those seniors, a lot of families that now live on Keto or ground will come to this. Honestly, I think the plan that's laid out, it's obnoxious. It's in 2,000 square feet. I think the town should be staying in their means. And where's it supposed to be going? For the high school.
It's like across the street.
Yeah, that's a little big open area, right?
Yeah, that's there's also coming into play now some question about study having to be done because where they want to put the pool in that plan, it may float.
We have an issue already, so who's in town.
Yes, there's going to have to be a study done to see if the pool is going to stay in the ground.
Who's going to help it? Who's going to help it? Is there any looking at any.
The positives, I mean, obviously the town says this plan, I think everybody's realized it's too over the top. It's above the scope of the statement of need. Which I don't know how that happened, but that's
Well,
what gave
even,
the difference.
even reading through it, though, the statement of need doesn't seem to have been developed with an in-depth, you know,
Oh, there's a lot of
quantitative
information.
analysis. I mean, it was like, what do you want?
Yeah, that's
Sal, what do
exactly,
you
yeah.
want? Well, I need this and I like that, I need this, and then they put it together. Remember, it's the same scenario as the original police station replacement we got.
And they-
That was the
the
Taj
architect-
Mahal police station too, with all due respect.
Everybody's put on
$22
this what
million.
you want, and the architect came in and said, we can do this and this and
And
this
then,
too.
and then some.
So that's how we ended up
Taj
with
Mahal
a
would be awesome.
1.65 per building. That's 7,000.
Is there any way you guys can go back and get a different design that is not 17,000 square feet?
We'd have to go back, to the building commission. We'd have to redo their statement of needs, and then it would have to come through the entire process again.
You put it right from the first one?
Yeah. Yeah. And that could be years down the road, and we don't know what we may do. If the rate things are going, we may be spending $40,000 for a smaller building in 5 years.
I mean, nothing in here talks to, well, first and foremost, if we've got this driving force to bring this overall debt limit down, which seems to be at least Mark's #1 priority. This fits no way, shape. or form. The other thing that's not in here is like, if I was gonna spend $40 million, what's the priorities of town? It may not be anywhere near something like this, like you were talking. We can't buy trucks, we can't do this, we can't fix
Yeah.
schools, we can't do this. Is this really what we spend $40 million on? So there's no balance in here saying, what do we give up if we do this? Because debt's gonna go sky high. We'll be in this scenario where we can't buy a truck, can't do anything for years to come.
This would be a very good loss. Because
Yes.
there's no way 20,000 people.
Well-
It's a new DNA, but a much higher.
The thing you have to keep in mind too is that everybody in town's taxes will go up 2, 3 mils. But you're also gonna have to pay a membership along to this facility. So it's just how it works.
Do you get any sense for what membership numbers were on some? of
There's
the places?
actually a sheet in there, you can see some of them. I mean, they run,
Well, you have the fees. I don't
the
mean.
no
the
fee
fees.
ones are just, that's like the senior center.
I mean, like the ones that were.
But the ones that were-
members
So it varied, it varied.
So I'll say this, West Hartford, you're gonna ask, used to run Cornerstone. And even they said, we can't do this. And they hired an outside vendor from Boston, that's actually running Cornerstone. West Hartford was one to do it.
Do they pay them to do that?
I'm sure.
That was something we looked at, but there was a lot of pushback about having to be outside of town control. I don't know what the sticker was. On the plus side, for the Y, you build it, doesn't cost the town any money, unless the town wants to do some kind of deal with them. The swim team has a place to swim, the town has a town pool, and seniors have a place for their water aerobics or whatever they do or their classes, and they can. The Y was more than willing to work with the town recreation department and with the senior center, so, you know, put programs together.
So people are not actually buying ships from the wide to go and see those pools and others.
One of the complaints about using a Y is that it would be part of Greater Hartford Y, and anybody can use it. But I also learned, at least I learned it from all these places, and what we gathered was that all of these town ones are relying on outside membership too, just trying to keep the losses low. So you're basically in the same boat. We have a 72,000 square foot facility. We're gonna have to try and pull outside people. It's keep this thing afloat. Or it's gonna be billions of dollars of loss a year. I believe we projected here about $1 million a year loss. Is what the number came out.
There's a Y and the benefit.
Yeah. Meriden has one. We actually looked at the Meriden Y, real nice facility. Take a ride down there, look at it. It's 34,000 square feet. It's very similar size where they wanted to build.
Isn't that what the just swim teams, Meriden?
That's where, yeah, they're using Meriden now.
I mean, we propose to touch the law.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and if you look at all the competing priorities that we have, I mean, we're gonna have to, raise bonds for those competing. We got, like you said, we have $300 million for town facilities that we have to maintain. That we haven't really done enough because, budget constraints. So
And some are getting, yeah,
it's just not the right time for this. We want to focus on doing things that are going to be outstanding for towns.
I mean, we can't build something like this and then not have fire trucks to go there with this fire. No, but we spent the money on pool, now we don't have fire trucks. We can't buy police cars.
Sure. Any other?
Yeah, my 2 cents is I know a lot of people want to have a pool. I think a very small percentage of people will actually use it, but everyone will end up paying for it. I think the total price tag is way out of our range for the debt limit that we're carrying. We've got what? 2026, till we get down to about the $40 million level, I think.
Which is really
The ceiling.
That's our ceiling.
Right, so, I mean, I couldn't be looking at doing this again, in a bigger conversation of what are the overall priorities, and we're scratching around worrying about whether our public safety people, whether we're gonna spend $5 million on upgrading where they are. Well, I have to put public safety ahead of recreation. So, I mean, we know we're going in that direction. So, I certainly think that it's a huge number. Okay, they want to do something to scale it back. Well, I still think our priorities are in other areas until our levels get down. So I don't want them wasting time to go back and say, well, what about 20 million? Because I'm not guaranteeing that at 20 million, it would make the top of my list as far as what town priorities are.
Exactly.
So,
That's the number that the Y was looking to spend.
and
Was 17 to 20 million dollars, and they're not under the same constraints as the town with,
Yeah.
prevailing wages and everything, so they can build a nicer facility for less money. I'm sorry, but that's the reality, and if the town doesn't want to go down that road, it doesn't make any difference to me because I'm not going to use it. I would like to see a pool in town, it would be nice to have.
I think to the proposal or the option of the Y, I think that I would just need a lot more information.
Yeah.
So, who's going to own the property, and getting something in return for the property, leasing it, or, there's got to, there are details in there that, so if someone wants to come with a plan, certainly we'll look at the plan.
I think the plan is to get through this plan first.
Yeah.
And make a determination as to whether or not this is feasible. And that's why they wanted to send it to us, Marcus. So I want you guys to look through it before we go any further. We can just work from there.
So Kevin, from our perspective, kind of got input from all the members here. Back to provide some kind of response to the town council.
You want to be our liaison, you pass our comments on.
Sure.
It's okay with me.
I mean, I think that we should share, our thoughts.
And when I went into this, I was really hoping that there would be more funding assistance, stuff like that. And it was funny because we talked to Donna Beach, Abercrombie, and then Lopes. And Abercrombie and Lopes actually recommended we look at the Y option. because they said there is no money. So, right there I went, okay, so we're stuck with a whole lot, or we can come up with a pool and reach some kind of a happy compromise. Like Jerry said, I would love to see a whole lot more. They came in for, it was like a 2-hour presentation. They gave us basics and we had some back and forth question and answers for them, but there's a lot more to that. Go forward with that. Yeah, there's not nearly enough information to go forward with the Y action.
Okay. So we'll discuss, we all done? Okay, let's discuss item 11.
Item 11 is something that has come up for the last few years. The Kensington Volunteer Fire Department, which there are 4 fire companies in town. One is owned by the town, one of the buildings and properties, South Kensington. The other 3 are 501c3s. They're independent of the town. The town uses them for vehicles, equipment. We provide a quarterly reimbursement for operating costs up to an established level, and provide training and other things for the folks who are there. The request was for the town to pay for replacing the parking. I did check with the public works director, who did an analysis of the parking lot, and then worked with our vendor Galasso out of East Granby, who does very good work around the roads, very good. You can see there were 3 quotes that came back. The recommendation was to go with the higher one, which was new pavement, depth of 4.25 inches, et cetera. With contingencies, the estimate would be about $100,000 to do the project. First question that came up with this is, since the town doesn't own the building, can we use town dollars, use town resources to do this? So the 3rd page, right after in this, first 2 pages, first page, you'll see there's an email from Attorney D'Onofrio giving a legal opinion that yes, under the Municipal Powers Act, the town can appropriate funds to pay the parking lot. It's performing a public function. So number 1, there's something that they're doing on behalf of the town. Town assets are located at the property, so there is a town benefit for that. And the work is necessary to support fire protection. Also, under 7148C4, the town has the power to provide fire protection, organize, maintain, regulate persons, provide the necessary apparatus, and do all other things necessary or desirable protection of the municipality from fire. So municipalities are only allowed to do things that the legislature provides us with the authorities who clearly have a legal right to do this. The other thing, relying on the Municipal Powers Act allows is there are a number of other charities, 501c3s throughout town. The second risk that was considered was, is everybody going to line up looking for $100,000 from the town? We just talked about all the things on town property that need to be done. I think relying on this would limit that exposure by saying the town did this because this fire company is providing protection under the Municipal Powers Act. It's a fire company. There are a number of charities that provide great value to the communities, but not necessarily to the town per se. So with that, the council asked for the board to provide the feedback on ways to fund that and to consider.
So is this the only fire department that's 501c3?
You know, the three of the 4
So they see this and they'll be.
could be. Yeah, the Berlin and East Berlin, all their parking lots are in good shape. I did look at some background though. The town has purchased boilers for them in the past, has done roof work in the past. However, in discussing it, the feedback I did receive is that in each of those instances, the firehouse shared in the cost. I'm not suggesting 50-50, but they, so to speak, they had some skin in it. So something you could consider, or 2 considerations for you is, number 1, would you ask for, could, if you wanted, request some financials to say, is this group, I'm not saying they are, but is this group sitting on $500,000 and don't want to spend it? I'm not saying any way they are, but it would be reasonable for the town to say, show us that this is truly going to, it's not something we could do.
They themselves could actually go to the
They could have pretty decent history. They have sought public funding from representatives for the last 5 years. I've been able to secure funding from the state. That's what they've communicated anyway. The second part of it is, as I mentioned, you could ask them to put some skin in it. Whether you ask for financials or not, you could say, we estimate it's going to be $100,000 for contingency, and the town believes it would be prudent to appropriate 50, 75, 90, whatever the number is, you think that they should have to put something into it. As far as if you were going to do that, I think there's 3 places, and I mentioned them in the motion. First, you could propose to include it in the next budget, in the capital plan or the financing plan, and recommend putting it there. The town, you could either provide a grant to the fire company and say, here's a grant, you go contract with Boston, go ahead. Or the town could do it. And I talked with the town attorney, he said you could write a contract that eliminates the town's liability. We're not doing this for you, we're helping you, but this is not a town project per se. So you could include it in the next budget and include in the mill rate. You could propose a non-budgeted appropriation of unassigned fund balance. Just take it out of savings and say, we're going to spend it that way. You could utilize some of the 22 general fund surplus. I walked through the list there. You could add this to the list. If there's enough money, it could be added on, or it could supplant something else that's on the list that you might think. I couldn't think of another way to fund it, but I'm certainly open if there's other ways to potentially.
Don't we have a difference? The Hubbard playground? What they were asking for the capital budget?
Well, they asked for, we didn't actually fund any.
No, we didn't fund it, what I'm saying, we were expecting that on that. That's $400,000.
Well, we took everything out of the budget, so there was no infusion of money for it, 200,000.
Right.
Zero, so there's no actual extra money there.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
On the write-up here in the second paragraph, where it says the current paving funds used by the town are from sources, state grants and town bonding, that are restricted to town roads and property, so unless otherwise indicated by the finance department or council. Does that mean the letter that you have here says we could do it?
This is just the ability of the town to provide town funds for it.
Yes.
This is state grant money that we use, so that's all we're using to fund it.
Right, so his opinion didn't address that.
His opinion didn't address that. You probably could stretch it because we have, under the Municipal Powers Act, the right to do this. You can make an argument that the grant funds, TAR and GRI money could be used for this. But I would say in that instance, since that is the only source, if you were to take $100,000 of that money, you are probably replacing a road that would be done somewhere else in town. It's not to say it shouldn't. I mean, maybe this is a higher road. Public Works Director did say that parking lot isn't really, it is, it needs to be done.
So this will be from the road, the driveway, all the way to the back of the house.
Why does that mean? So we can do like a 75-25.
Potential. And what the council was looking for was some guidance from the Board of Finance. One way to fund it with town money, what would be the best way? And I came up with 3, but if there's a different way, somebody has another way, I would discourage you from bonding some of this, but that is a possibility. I didn't put it on the list. But
Here's what I'm thinking, that we should so much they have. Because honestly, we've done 2-3 years on any kind of fundraising. So they can't have that. To be honest, it's just their perception. So.
Jeff, probably going to put a wash on getting these.
Yeah, from there, there's nothing that it's, you're talking about. It's like positive.
then there's other stuff.
Yeah.
Which is the fundraisers. It's just good.
So I don't think just part of our due diligence and then see what look at their financials. I mean, from my perspective, we have volunteers, our equipment. They're providing, public safety for us, it's a no-brainer that we got to help them if they need
We
that.
may be enough to
You know what I'm saying?
100%, because.
On the other side, I mean, you're providing service volunteer for the people who live in the Kensington Fire
I
District.
agree.
So what's the ask of them too? You know, it's like, I don't.
The volunteers are saving the town millions.
No, I mean,
salary benefits.
Yeah.
I live in Kensington. What am I giving to them for saving me when my house burns down?
Yeah.
Should I have some skin in the game a little bit too, you know? Should I first reach out to all the residents in the fire district? I don't know. I don't know if that's an option. Do a fundraiser and then try to kick in some more. Kind of starts to become easy just to ask for money from the town without.
Oh, but I live in Burles.
I also, you know, it would be interesting to know, like you said, the other two, their parking lots look pretty good.
Yeah.
Have they done them in the last 5 years? And if they have,
Burles, I think, is still out of water.
Yeah, East Berlin's got a few years.
It's
I mean, what did they do? It'd be interesting to understand.
The firehouse at the turnpike has one thing that I don't believe either one has, and that is the wind tower.
Yeah, but that,
So they have
That's what I'm
revenue,
telling you,
they have
this-
revenue.
pay a lot of money.
This tower generates over $100,000 a year in revenue. You see revenue, some tower money. I'm not saying theirs does, but that is
It's probably pretty good.
it's a good unknown source. One thing we should probably discuss, we own some is potential build. And we have our voice company and the windows, the tiles on the floor popping off, panels on the ceiling are popping off. It's getting to be the shot. Well, we put money to the roof already, but the inside is completely shot. It's getting worse. It's, you guys go in there, well, that's how bad it is. We took a very old school. I think it was never, I think this was brought up, I'll tell you, my staff asked me the question, we're gonna do this. Admittedly, they're providing fire services volunteers, absolutely. But if the town is not took $100,000, put $100,000 in for the leaking roof in the property that the town owns. Is it something where we should be looking at a design? Should the town be looking instead of renovating that? Do you look at a new build? Is it better to stay some things in firehouses, do a different building? Because the school was never designed for that. I do think if that's a path you wanted to consider, look at. I did talk to Jim Simons, his fire administrator capacity. They do map out halls around the various firehouses to find out volumes, because you want to place those firehouses close to where the volume is. So I think if that's a conversation, it's conversation worth having. I think with both the Board of Finance and the council. I think Jim Simons, I'm sure plenty of others he would bring in. They've done a lot of this work to really talk about what should the longer term vision be.
I'm surprised we dropped fits. Say that right.
Even phasing that one out possible.
Well, that was the thought of
So the equipment is a lot more advanced. You're not talking about.
I mean,
That
that
was
Scrubs, right?
one of the things when I was at Northeast Utilities, I sat on a committee. Their whole idea is they have area work centers all over Nova Scotia. And they brought in consultants. I mean, they had more than 4 or whatever. So that was the whole thing, all the analytics on where the calls are, where. In the end, it turned out that, Northeast Utilities at the time, Eversource now, didn't really need all the area work centers. They've been selling. They sold Simba, they sold one in Middletown, whatever. They consolidated, they expanded others, it's like, it probably is a worthwhile thing to do every once in a while.
it may be worth a joint meeting to talk about public safety, talk about a police station, talk about firehouses, the vehicles, and maybe developing a longer term plan for the town.
Okay, so on this one, Kevin, you could ask for financial information. You can get it to us before our next meeting. Sounds like it's urgent that needs to be done. Get it to us before next meeting, allow us maybe to make a decision.
Because I'm sure we need a plan for coverage, everything's ripped up.
Okay. Next is the update, the finance update. Kevin.
All right, I will be brief with this. I'll skip the first couple pages. The financials continue to be strong. I think we're still looking at good results. I did update the revenue part with the VNA, and the only comment that I will make, well, 2 comments we'll make is In May, we actually lost the brackets year over year, so I'm pleased with that. I recognize it's only 21,000 up year over year, but losing brackets is a good accomplishment. And at 552 through 11 months, we are still within screening distance of the $600,000 estimate we have in the budget is developed. So I still think we're going to end up in that area of 600,000. They're not to be celebrated when you've got $1.5 million of expenses, but we're continuing to track that. And continuing to look. The thing I wanted to draw your attention to are the next pages. I received a memo from Kimberly Tennyson, Executive Finance Officer, OPM. And it just talks about a public act that was passed by the legislature dealing with municipal oversight. We're obviously close to that. The town's in strong financial condition, but a couple of things that they did change, and just a couple of things to draw attention to. You know, a fund balance percentage of less than 5% in the three immediately preceding years would start to draw, we hit the criteria going after that. So we have a floor of 11%, we're actually well above that. But from an OPM perspective, as we think about 11% going down, half of that, then you start to draw on state oversight and things like that. So, you know, I don't think our target should be above state oversight, it should be above that. So I don't think the 11% is an unreasonable floor for us to go with. You know, and other things that start to draw attention are certainly revenue anticipation notes, or other things that we have, even during COVID, where there was a lot of discussion about revenue anticipation notes. The town elected to go with lower percentage rather than deferral of tax collection. I think that was a wise move. Collection remained strong. I know for some folks it was a challenge, but overall the town remained strong. I think we weathered COVID very well for that. And while there were communities that issued revenue anticipation, we didn't even contemplate it. So I just give you this because I received the updates. There were changes that are in here. I actually only looked at 5 pages of legislation, but it did change a few of the criteria. I think it's really in the wake of some challenges that folks have had, specifically one municipality is still dealing with some challenges. I think the legislature is looking at giving OPM and the state a little bit more authority to step in, especially where our tax dollars are being lent to help communities. Again, we're not even close to that area, but we're just making it aware. I don't know if there's any questions.
Okay, next. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thanks.